Hello aspirants, welcome to UPSC Geek by NRG. I am hoping once more that you all are doing fine and striving each day. So today we shall be starting with the lecture number 5, that is Plato part 3rd. We have already done part 1 and part 2, and we have covered the topics like introduction of Plato, that is life and time of Plato, his concept of allegory of cave, his theory of forms and ideas, his theory of myth of metals, theory of justice, and today in this lecture 5th, that is Plato part 3rd, we will be mainly dealing with his two important theory, that is theory of education and his theory of philosopher king. Okay, so these are very interesting topic, because as Plato propounds the idea of philosopher king, right, to attain the ideal state which he is aspiring to make Athens as one. So in order to make Athens as an inspiring idealist state, he basically aspires to make a philosopher king. Okay, so what kind of education that philosopher king and the rest of the classes of the state of Athens need, that is the that is the ruler class, that is the warrior class, and the trader class, will be taught in his concept of theory of education. Okay, so before moving further, I'd request all of you to show your support by subscribing to the channel UPSC Geek by NRG, and also like the video. So without any further ado, let's start with the lecture series, and let's start with the theory of education, that is the first theory for today's lecture. Okay, so just to give you a brief premise over what his idea of theory of education is, Plato's Republic is considered as one of the best book ever written in the field of education. Okay, so this is not what I am saying, this is a greatest thinker, that is Rousseau, has said. Okay, Rousseau said that Republic is the best book ever written on education. Okay, and you can also use this statement while claiming the authority or the credibility of the Republic. Okay, the magnum opus of Plato basically. So since just state is where society is divided into three classes, okay, that is warrior class, rural class, warrior class, and trader classes, according to qualities of soul, that is the gold, the silver, and the brass. Okay, Plato devised the system of education to find out who has the which quality. Okay, so that he can assign particular roles to the people thereafter. Okay, so let's start with his theory of education. Okay, so before starting, what is education according to Plato? Okay, it is very paramount to know the notion of education according to the Plato. Like in today's notion, what we understand by the terminology education is that to get educated in some university or school. Okay, to it is basically accumulation of learning with experience. But in those times, Plato's education is the training of mind. Okay, it is basically defined as the training of mind. People may have natural qualities, but these qualities have to be refined. Okay, everyone is born with some innate qualities. Okay, but through the process of education, these qualities have to be refined. Thus there is a role of both nature and nurture. Okay, nature is what we are born with, but nurture is what we are processed through. Okay, so that the nature, the true qualities which are innate within us comes out more explicitly. So according to Plato, the root cause of corruption is the corruption of soul. Okay, so just to ensure that the philosopher king and the rest of the classes do not make their soul corrupt, he is basically propounding the idea of theory of education. Okay, so as to achieve the enlightenment of soul. Okay, so Plato's theory of education is linked to his theory of justice. Okay, in previous lecture part, that is part 2nd of Plato, we have seen his very important theory of justice. If you guys haven't watched the video, I recommend you to go to the playlist of PSIR and watch the Plato lecture, Plato part 2nd. Okay, it will also give you a beautiful edifice of what Plato's theory of justice is all about. Okay, so in a just state, everyone is to perform the task according to his natural aptitude or spiritual quality of the soul. Okay, so in like, just to give you a basic summary of the theory of justice, he basically propounded the idea of myth of metal, that there are three basic classes of people according to their spiritual qualities of the soul. Okay, so there were people of gold, who were basically ruler classes, in whom wisdom basically dominates. Then there are people of silver soul, okay, who were basically warrior class, in which uh, a quality of courage dominates. Okay, plus there is a again, the last class is the people of brass or iron, okay, in which the quality of temperance dominates, and they were basically the traders or agricultural classes. Okay, to find out these qualities, Plato devised a system of education. Okay, so basically, if I make a, let's say, 10 to 20 people stand in a queue, okay, just by looking at their face I cannot make that distinction which people belong to which class. Okay, I can only discover the true innate quality of individual by processing them through a rigorous process of education, right? There will be examination which will explicit the innate quality by your performance on the exam. Okay, the exam per se is not confined to the today's perspective of exam, that is the written question answer exam. Okay, it is beyond the today's notion of exam that we hold today. Okay, that time the examination included various aspects, that is from filtration process through the dialectics to the different several ways that we will be seeing in further course series. Okay, so Plato devised a system of education to just find out the innate qualities that were being hidden deeply in the people of Athens. Okay, so in Athens education was privatized. So why what is also one of the reasons that Plato is coming out with his theory of education is that education was privatized in Athens. Okay, so the sophists, the roving teachers, would charge fees for their teaching, and only the rich could afford it. Okay, Plato was not in favor of the system and was impressed by the Spartan system of state sponsored education. So basically there was a private education system which was prevailing in Athens during those time, and the sophists, who were basically wandering teachers, okay, who used to wander places to places, and they used to impart education mainly to the rich elite classes of Athens. Okay, and they used to charge exorbitant amount of fees from the parents, and the parents who could afford the fees, they can only make their kids study in these private sophist schools. Okay, and the parents who could not, or the guardians who could not afford the fees, they could not make sure that their kids also undergo the process of education. Okay, so this is what Plato was very much dismissed about. He did not like this process of privatization of education in Athens. Okay, because it was leaving a massive population of people out of the arena of education. They were not completely getting educated. Okay, so Plato was not in favor of this system and was impressed by the Spartan system. So basically he was very much inspired by the Spartan system of education, because that was completely state sponsored education, which will be irrespective of their guardian wills or the expenditure capability to make their issue or the kids go through the process of education. Okay, it was completely state sponsored, which ensured that everyone gets a holistic education in their formative years. Okay, so further, according to Plato, the state is essentially pedagogic, implying that imparting education is one of the most important function of the state. So basically Plato is propounding the idea that a state should essentially be a pedagogic, okay, where the imparting education to the people is one of the most important function of the state. Okay, so education is the primary means of socialization, and if the state wants obedient citizens, the education system plays a critical role. Okay, so basically just so see, we have to understand what the notion of just state for Plato was. Okay, so just state is where the people are doing their job and there is a sense of harmony in the society. Okay, so Plato is suggesting to the student that if the state needs a, if a state wants a obedient citizens, okay, they should basically promote more education so that they can enlighten the souls of individuals, okay, and they will be more understanding in nature, and they will be more obedient citizens to the city state of Athens, okay. So it is also one of the reason why Plato is promoting this system of education. Plato has favored education for women, and we see it in his theory of philosopher king. So Plato is also called as first feminist. Why? Because he also was very gender sensitive. He also talked in favor of women education, and most of his contemporary, or almost all of his contemporary, did not do the same. They were only promoting a patriarchal society where men will only be getting education, confining women to the four walls of their homes, okay. So Plato went a step beyond by also promoting the education for women. He did not, he coined the term philosopher king, but his terminology of philosopher king was beyond any gender taboo, okay. The philosopher king also included philosopher queen, okay. A queen can also equally responsible to state to rule a state, okay. So he also favored the education for women, and we see it in the theory of philosopher king, where any child regardless of sex can become philosopher king if he shows necessary qualities, okay. So basically Plato's notion of philosopher king was more quality based rather than the sex or gender or any other characteristics based, okay. So Plato was in favor of military education. He also emphasized the study of mathematics and logic, which develops the rational faculties of mind, okay. So physical training, military education was a very important part of Plato's education, okay. As in the later slide, we will be seeing how the age differentiation was made in order to give a specific type of education to the specific age group, right, like 0 to 6 year there was a singing course for them, so that they can develop their mental faculty very very feasibly and conveniently, okay. To the next age group, we'll be seeing them. Just have an idea that Plato was in favor of military education, which was also prevailing in Sparta, okay, from where the Plato was influenced. He was also emphasized the study of mathematics and logic, which develops the rational faculty of mind, very logical. So what was why was Plato so much censored about artistic studies, okay. Plato was not very pro poetries and all the romanticized education. So why he was anti artistic artistic approach? Let's say it. Plato was advocate of censorship of poetry, okay. He argued that while people take from poets what sounds like ethical knowledge, when in reality poets are no different from sophists, okay. They do not teach knowledge to the people, but rather opinions, okay. So basically Plato is suggesting the idea that the poets are no different from the sophists, because they do not teach the real knowledge to the people, but rather an opinion, okay. So most of the time when an artist writes a poem or poetry, okay, it is basically his or her subjective experience, subjective opinions about something, okay. So here Plato is making sense, okay, because Plato was very much strict about the real knowledge and not the subjective opinion, because subjective opinion is again relative, which will subject to change as per the temporal and spatial changes, okay. So he was very much specific about the real knowledge or the true knowledge, and he promoted the idea of logic and mathematics to develop that real faculty of the brain, rather than all the subjective subjects like poetry and etc, okay. So poetry consists of character, both gods and heroes, frequently behaving unjustly, okay. Thus Plato asks, how can we expect children to become just rulers if they are exposed to literature that glorifies injustice, okay. So basic concern of Plato is that most of the time during their times, what the poets used to explicit is the unjust character and unjust stories, okay, where let's say evil is fighting with a king and etc etc. More negative aspects of society was shown to the people. Sorry guys. So here Plato is saying that if the people are exposed to more glorified injustice version of poetry, then how can we expect them to become just, right? Because what we teach to the children, they become that. Okay, if we show them an idol of, let's say, a great hero, he or she will always aspire to be a great hero, a superman, rather than anyone else. Okay, so the role model mode of teaching is very important for children's formative years. Okay, so here the Plato is saying that if we show them the bad ideas, glorified injustice idea, then how can we expect them to be a good? That's why he is anti poetry and anti literature as well. Okay, so literature for Plato should reflect order and harmony, so that same is reflected in the state in his own words. Okay, because guys, always remember the main, okay, prima donna statement of Plato is basically state is individual writ large. Okay, state is mainly comprised of, state is like bigger picture of which citizens or the individuals are smaller pictures. Okay, the way we make the individual, the state will ultimately become that. Okay, so in his own words, in the words of Plato says that we must not only compel our poets on pain of expulsion to make their poetry the express image of noble character, we must also supervise craftsmen of every kind and forbid them to leave the stamp of baseness, okay, license, meanness, unseemliness, or painting and sculpture or building or any other work of their hands, and anyone who cannot obey shall not practice his art in our commonwealth. Basically, he is propounding the idea of regulating the craftsmanship. Okay, the regulation of, and also continuously monitoring of the arts which are being produced by the artist. Okay, so that the message which is being reached out to the citizen and children of the Athens are basically noble in nature. Okay, so this is what is the crux of this excerpt of Plato. Okay, so we now continue. Plato's view are highly relevant in contemporary times. Okay, so let's see how it is very relevant even to this contemporary time. While there is a strict control over what's written down in textbooks and what's taught in schools, artistic censorship is often seen as violative of individual fundamental rights. Okay, because we have freedom of expression. Okay, we have all the right to express ourselves freely without any authoritative regulations. Okay, so we should applaud the Indian Constitution, which has rightly put reasonable restrictions. Okay, so this is also one of the reason, guys, why do we have this clause of reasonable restrictions imposed upon the fundamental rights. Okay, on freedom of speech and expression. Education does not occur in the vacuum. Okay, it is of little use to teach children certain ideals in schools while the whole society outside school functions on different values. Okay, so very valid point that we cannot teach the student the thing which is not applicable or which is not practiced in the society, because they will not be able to understand, because they are seeing one thing in society, they are reading completely different thing in, let's say, textbook. How they will understand it? Okay, so recently an issue on the alteration of NCERT is also surfacing. Okay, so this is the basic idea behind that. Okay, most of the time when we read some obscure historical facts and etc., most of the time we just brag them, we just remember them, memorize them. Okay, so we do not really able to connect with those historical contexts. So what is the true essence of learning that? Okay, it is better to experience the true or the real experiences of the today's world. Okay, because today's history, today's let's say polity or today's politics will be tomorrow's history. Okay, so let's emphasize more upon today's history rather than yesterday's history. Yesterday's history is also important, but not to the extent that we could not understand or connect to the cultures. Okay, so that is the basic rationale behind alteration of this series of NCRTs, which is being surfaced in today's uh, modern arena. But most of the time it is getting connected to a communal angle, which is not very valid as well. But here we cannot make any judgment until and unless there is an holistic discussion and debate upon the same. Okay, so this is what an idea which is being also propounded by Plato, that it is of little use to teach children certain ideals in school while the whole society outside school functions on different values. Okay, so what was the scheme of education of Plato was that uh, his uh, his initial stage basically was the first stage, where he is propounding the idea of primary education, that is 0 to 6 years of age. Okay, so what will be the course which will be taught here? Okay, so the first is gymnastic, music and moral stories should be taught at this stage. Okay, gymnastic for physical development, music for mental development and moral stories for character development. Okay, so here in the formative years, that is of 0 to 6 year, Plato is basically propounding the idea to promote more physical, mental and character building. Okay, so that it is very crucial years for all these formative developments of physical capabilities, mental development and character building. Okay, the second stage he is propounding the idea of secondary education, that will be from 6 to 20 years. Okay, first stage was from 0 to 6 years, then second stage is from 6 to 20 years. So all general subjects, that is mathematics, geometry, history, geography, physical, military education, etc. are taught at this stage. Very valid point, very valid point, because that is the right age in which the human cognition has reached to the particular level where the mathematics, geometry, history and etc. will be grasped comprehensively. Okay, so every age has got certain level of cognition, but most of the time we try to own a lot of subjects to the children whose brain cannot process those kind of complexities of the subject. Okay, so this is the right age, very scientific age, which is being propounded by Plato, that in the age group between 6 to 20 years it is very logical to teach the students the most complex subjects like mathematics, geometry, history, geography, physical, military education and etc. Okay, so as to develop more rational and more developed faculties in the children's. Okay, so there will be the, after this first stage and second stage, after the 20 years of age, there will be first filtration occurs. Filtration is basically the exam or the test. Okay, so that the best out of the rest can be selected. Okay, so first filtration occurs at the age of 20. Those who pass the test, that is show the capacity to study further, will be promoted, rest will join the producer class. Okay, so here what is happening is that in out of third classes, that is ruler class, warrior class and producer class, the ruler classes and warrior classes are taken out. Okay, for further education, and those who could not pass the test will be remained as producer class. So they will be departed the training of, let's say, craftsmanship. They will be given a skill training, right? So that they can engage themselves in all the producer job. Okay, they can produce, they can create. Okay, because they lack the capability to study further. Okay, and the two classes, that will be the next class, ruler class and warrior classes, they will be processed through the higher education, and and in the higher education there will be first stage from 20 years to 30 years of age. Okay, so the level of subject will increase. Okay, so the quality of the level of the subject will increase. The focus will be on mathematics, geometry and literature. Okay, mathematics, according to Plato, not only how to think logically but also convey the ideal of conceptual truth. Okay, so why mathematics, like so much emphasis upon mathematics, is because mathematics is not, according to Plato, is only about thinking logically, but it is also an ideal way to convey the truth, conceptual truth. Okay, and then occurs after the 30 years of age, then occurs a second filtrations. Okay, second filtration is basically second test. Okay, so in second test occurs at the age of 30. So those who show the aptitude for further learning will be promoted, and rest will join the soldier class or warrior class. Okay, so first filtration process will produce for producer class in 20 years of age. Then the second filtration will produce a warrior class in 30 years of age, and the people who pass the second filtration, they will be going to the second stage of education process, that is from 30 years to 50 years. Okay, in this age group, basically dialectics and practical training will be departed to the citizens. Okay, so what Plato has to say about the education. Okay, the learning of mathematics is not sufficient according to Plato. Okay, the learning of mathematics is not sufficient according to Plato. While mathematics relies on numbers and diagrams, the goal is to go beyond the realm of senses. Okay, so numbers and diagrams according to Plato is mainly confined to the senses. Okay, and Plato is aspiring to go beyond the realm of senses. Okay, thus at this stage dialectics will be taught. So in the second stage of higher education, that's why there is a more emphasis on the dialectics, because Plato wants to go beyond the realm of senses. Okay, because he is training the philosopher kings, okay, who must be wise and wisdom. Okay, they must possess the a quality or the trait of wisdom. Okay, that's why the Plato is aspiring to go beyond the realm of senses and depart them the education of dialectics. Okay, so dialectics, as discussed earlier, is a method that leads to discovery of universal truth. Okay, so dialectics is again refined a method in which through synthesis and anti-synthesis you reach to through thesis and antithesis you reach to the synthesis. That is the ultimate truth. Okay, so the dialectical knowledge, argues Plato, is closest to universal principle that underlie the world. Okay, so this will be knowledge not only of physical phenomena but of ethics as well. So here not only knowledge about physical phenomena will be departed, but also about ethics, because the philosopher king will be the one who will be ruling the state and aspiring to make a state as a just state. Okay, and according to justice, according to Plato, the justice is very much tantamount to ethics as well. Okay, uh, until a philosopher become a ruler, or a ruler learns philosophy, there is no end to human predicament. Okay, so here that's why the Plato is wanting to make a philosopher king as a ruler. Okay, so that he can also have a sense of ethics, and hence the learner of dialectics will come to know the true meaning of justice or the form of justice. Okay, so there is however a higher truth than justice, which Plato calls good. Okay, so this good will be attained by only a few and represents the universal principle that unites both the physical and spiritual worlds. Okay, so there is a higher truth of justice according to Plato, that is good. Okay, so Plato is calling that higher form than justice, higher truth than justice, as a good. Okay, and only one philosopher king will be able to reach to that level of education, that is to the good level, that is beyond justice. Okay, and he will represent the universal principle that unites both the physical and spiritual world. Okay, so this good gives meaning of everything in the universe. Okay, so although dialectics knowledge is necessary to acquire this good, the understanding of good comes only through the year of training and a flash of insight or a realization of this sorts. Okay, this awareness of good transcends mere logic. Okay, so Plato is saying that though through dialectics uh, a certain level of knowledge, true knowledge, can be attained, but this level of good knowledge will only be attained through dialectics and rigorous training. Okay, years of rigorous training. Okay, and there will be a flash of insight, like a Buddha movement. Okay, a Buddha moment where in a flash of a light there was a insight in the Buddha, okay, which led him to the sense of realization. Okay, so that sort of process is also being expected by Plato in his ideal philosopher king. Okay, so this awareness of good transcends mere logic. So that particular awareness of good will transcends mere logic in the philosopher king. So only those who attain this final vision will be allowed to become the philosopher king. Okay, so the only people who will attain this final vision will be allowed to become the philosopher kings, and in reality very few will be able to attain it. Okay, even Plato is accepting that in reality there are very few people who will be able to attain this level of true knowledge. Okay, further, since the good transcends mere logic, it also provides the basis for absolute rule of philosopher king, as we shall see later. Okay, so it provides a basis for absolute rule because there is a mere logic which is being transcended by the philosopher king who have attained the level of good knowledge. Okay, so hence the Plato propounds the idea of absolute rule there, because out of that philosopher king a mere logic will come out. Okay, so Plato is aspiring to give a absolute authority to the philosopher king because through him a mere logic will be transcended. Okay, and there are very less chances that he will do something unethical. Okay, because he has attained that level of spiritual enlightenment through which a mere logic will transcend out of him or her. Okay, so let's now step in his theory of philosopher king. We knew how we will get the philosopher king. Okay, through this education, primary education and higher education. Among higher education there will be first stage, second stage, and the person who will sustain the second stage, that is 30 to 50 years of age or rigorous training in dialectics, and there are very few people who will be reaching to that level of good through whom a mere logic will transcend. He will be philosopher king. Okay, so now let's see, after becoming a philosopher king, what Plato is suggesting to the philosopher king, or how he is expecting philosopher king to be, or to make Athens a just state. Okay, so for no law or ordinance public opinion is mightier than the knowledge. Okay, so no law is mightier than the knowledge. Okay, so being an idealist school, they will always put more emphasis upon the knowledge. Okay, the true knowledge. So as discussed in Plato's theory of justice, a just state is ruled by reason. Okay, so according to Plato, a just state can only be attained by the rule of reason. Okay, or a rule by reason. Okay, so the ruler must have a knowledge of how to maintain the division of labor, and he or she should be one in whom reason dominates the other two virtues. Okay, so basically philosopher king should be one in which the reason dominate over the two virtue, that is courage and temperance. Okay, so rulers will be a class of people who have realized the state of good which we talked just in the previous slide. Okay, and are the ones who have come out of the cave of ignorance and seen the sunlight. Okay, in the allegory of cave we have seen how a person unshackled himself or breaks his chain and make his effort to come out of the cave to see the true sunlight. Okay, that is the symbolism of real knowledge. So basically he is expecting that philosopher king should have come out of the cave of ignorance by breaking all his chains and have seen the sunlight. Okay, that is the state of good or the true knowledge. He or she in whom the real reason will dominate over other two virtues, that is courage and temperance, and he or she deserves to be a true philosopher king. Okay, so the philosopher is a symbol of knowledge and sacrifice. Okay, so as we have seen the stages of education, okay, where a philosopher king had to go a process of education or the training till 50 years of age. So just think how big the deal is. Okay, that someone is going through the process of education till 50 years of age. He has sacrificed very formative, very important, very youth years of his time. So that's what Plato is saying, that the philosopher is a symbol of knowledge and sacrifice. Okay, he has proven abilities he has proven abilities because he passed through the filtration, first and second filtration process, and he ensured to reach to the third or the second, the last stage, okay, last stage of the process. Since he has attained the vision of good which transcends mere logic, the philosopher king will have absolute power. So it is a basically a reason why Plato wants to bestow absolute power upon the philosopher king, because Plato is propounding the idea that philosopher king has also reached to the state of good knowledge or the good, okay, and once when someone reached to that state of good, a mere logic transcends through him or her, okay, and hence if a mere logic is transcending through him or her, there are very higher chances that the person will be very logical, okay, very ethical, and hence Plato is trying to bestow absolute power upon him or her, so as to make Athens a just state, okay. So there are no limitations on his power of either public opinion or law, okay. So there will be no limitations, okay. That's why he is that is the basic pedestal or the basic idea behind his statement, that for no law or ordinance is mightier than knowledge, okay, because he has reached to that state of good, okay. There are no limitation on his power of either public opinion or law, okay. He is the one person captain who will be leading his entire team of city Athens, okay. So philosopher king need not be concerned about public opinion or the book of laws. He is a man of reason, a symbol of sacrifice. It would be foolish to question his wisdom, okay. As Plato is propounded or already mentioned that philosophy is the symbol of wisdom and sacrifice, okay, and if a person has undergone such level of sacrifice, such level of process of education, training, and etc., it would be very unwise to question his abilities, okay. It will be foolish to limit the expert practitioner of medicine with the book of medicine, okay. So basically the statement stands very important here, which says that it will be foolish to limit the expert or practitioner of medicine with the book of medicine, okay. It would be very foolish to limit a expert practitioner with the book of medicine, okay. So experience always stand a way ahead than the label, okay, than the label of education. There are more importance given to the experience in any field than the mere books or the mere books of, let's say, qualifications, okay. So that is the basic idea behind his theory of philosopher king. Now Plato is also advocating or exposing some of the problems with the institution of philosopher king, and he is also giving the solution, okay. So let's see some of the problems which is being explicit by Plato himself, that these are the problem which we can expect, okay, when there will be a institution of philosopher king who is ruling the city Athens, okay, city state of Athens, okay. So Plato himself suggests three problems, okay. Basically he is suggesting three problems with the institution of philosopher king. So first problem that he is suggesting is that to train the class of people to become philosopher king, okay. So the very first problem which is being suggested is that to train the class of people to become a philosopher king, okay. How we will be training the class of people who can sustain through the process, the entire process, primary education, higher education, first stage, second stage and etc., okay. And how can we choose, how to choose the best philosopher kings out of the rest, okay. For this he has given his elaborate theory of education as discussed earlier. For the as a solution, he is also giving his elaborate theory of education that we have discussed in a prior slides, okay. The second problem is to bring this man who have attained the state of wisdom or seen the sunlight back to the realm of opinions, back to the cave of ignorance, to become the rulers, okay. Because when you reach that state of good, you are beyond the normal, okay. Your level of thinking, your level will be a level of understanding can be very idealistic, okay. So Plato is also suggesting the issue of bringing them to the realm of opinions, back to the cave of ignorance, because you have to rule the people who are in the cave of ignorance, okay. So you also have to be in this particular cave in order to understand them better and in order to become a good ruler, okay, because at the end you have to rule them. These are the lovers of knowledge and not power, okay, so this, they will always give more importance to knowledge than power, okay. So Plato asserts that although reluctant, these are precisely rulers qualified to rule. So Plato is basically propounding the idea that a individual, a philosopher king who is very reluctant to rule will always make a best ruler, okay, because he do not carry a lust for power, okay, so he'll always be a just ruler or a best philosopher king, okay. So unless political power and philosophy meet together, there can be no rest from troubles, okay, for state, for all mankind, okay. So basically the statement which Plato himself have said, that until philosophers become a king or a king becomes a philosopher, there is no end to the human predicament, okay. So that is the basic idea behind this particular problem, okay. So the third problem which is being suggested by Plato is that with the institution of philosopher king is to ensure that he continues to rule in a just manner, okay, because we are bringing him back from the state of good to the ignorance, to the cave of ignorance. So we also have to ensure that he do not also get mingled with the rest and become an unjust, injust or unjust ruler, okay. We have to ensure that the philosopher kings continues to rule in a just manner with the public interest in the mind, okay. It must be ensured because we are endowing absolute power upon the philosopher king, so there are higher chances that his soul also gets corrupt, because power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, okay. So this is the very basic formula, okay, that the power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So there are higher chances that just to fulfill personal agendas, personal interests, that the philosopher king can also become a corrupt individual, okay. So it must be ensured that reason always remains the dominant virtue over courage and appetite. So it must be ensured in the philosopher king that the reason always remains the dominant virtue over courage and appetite, okay, and that authority over people is not utilized to promote self-interest of ruler, okay, and that authority of over people is not utilized to promote self-interest of ruler, okay. As a solution, Plato gives an elaborate theory of communism, which we shall discuss in the next topic, okay. So he, to solve this particular problem, he is giving his theory of communism, okay, that we will be seeing in the next topic. So Plato is advocating the idea that how can we select a philosopher king, okay. We have seen his theory of education, we are seeing his idea of philosopher king. He is suggesting how can we among the group of people who will be reaching that state of good, how can we select the one philosopher king, okay. So according to Plato, the philosopher has no lust for power. This is the first trait which is being propounded by Plato, that philosopher has no lust for power. Okay, he has a love for knowledge. So Plato, philosopher has no lust for power, he has a love for knowledge. Philosophers will be reluctant to govern or rule, okay. So philosophers are the one who will be reluctant to govern or rule, hence people will request them to accept the duty as a part of their obligation towards the state. Hence people will request them because they are already reluctant to govern, they are more knowledgeable, they are more prone towards knowledge, they are more inclined towards knowledge, and they are very reluctant towards power, they are not very power lusty, okay. Hence people will request them to accept the duty of a philosopher king, to accept the duty as a part of their obligation towards the state, okay. They are wise enough to be responsible, okay, to rule the state, okay. Hence people will request them that you come and rule us, basically, okay. Hence for a limited period they will accept the responsibility one by one, okay. Philosophers are sacrificing their love for knowledge for the sake of their duty towards the state, right. So as we have seen that the last process of education, the people who have true knowledge, true love for knowledge will sustain through that rigorous process, okay. that really shows their ability and love for knowledge. Hence they will very reluctantly come to the domain of power, right? And hence people will request them to come and fulfill their obligation to the state. They will one by one come, okay, sacrificing their love for knowledge. Okay, just think how important for them would be to be with the books, okay, or they're like already in love with knowledge, and now we are asking them to sacrifice that knowledge and come to rule. Okay, so how difficult it will be for them. So Plato is suggesting one by one, for certain time period, philosopher king will come. He will perform his duty, or he will fulfill his obligation towards the state. He will do his duty, and again he will return back to his love for knowledge. Then the second will come. So that is what he is suggesting, that the philosopher king is a symbol of knowledge and sacrifice. Okay, in the words of Plato, those states are the best governed where the rulers are reluctant to govern. Okay, so here, as they have the keen love for knowledge, they have very reluctant, they are very reluctant to govern. Okay, they are very reluctant to hold power, because he understands that money and power is not the source of good life. Okay, because they understand that these materialistic things of money and power are not the source of good life. Okay, the true knowledge is something which makes their life worthwhile, rather than the states where rulers are eager to govern. Okay, so those states are the best states where rulers are reluctant to govern. Okay, rather than the states where rulers are eager to govern. Okay, so men of appetite who have lust for power and money. Okay, so those states are best governed where rulers are reluctant to govern. So remember this lines, guys, so that you can quote in the answers to make your answers more readable and beautiful. Okay, so let's do a critical evaluation of his theory of philosopher king. Okay, so Aristotle was a major critic of Plato's idea of philosopher king. Okay, Aristotle, we will be doing in the next topic. Okay, his student, one of his best student, okay, Aristotle, he was also one of the major critic of Plato. Okay, so for Aristotle, law is a reason without passion. Okay, so Aristotle here is suggesting that law is a reason without passion. Okay, Aristotle has justified the rule of law over the rule of a person. Okay, so basically Aristotle is putting more emphasis, he's emphasizing more to the people than to the individual. Okay, as Plato suggested the idea that for no law or no ordinance is more important than knowledge. Okay, so Plato is basically giving more importance to the knowledge or the reason of individual, in contrast to that, because Plato himself is the suggesting the problem, the three problems that we have seen in the previous slide related to the institution of philosopher king, that there are chances that the knowledge or the philosopher king can go corrupt. Okay, so that's why, taking that as a caveat, Aristotle is propounding the idea that law is a reason without passion. Okay, so law is what? Rule of law, rule by people. Okay, where there is very less chances of going corrupt. Okay, there is always a balancing force. So Aristotle has justified the rule of law over the rule of person. According to him, not only are law and reason are same, but the rule of law has many advantages over rule of person. Okay, so he is giving the idea that rule of law has many advantages over rule of person. Okay, in reality it will be almost impossible to find the philosopher king. Okay, so in reality, in today's context, it will be very difficult or almost impossible to find the philosopher king. Okay, because nobody is without the passion or personal interest. Okay, so philosopher king is a utopia. In reality, it is a very utopia in the sense very idealistic or very ideal. Okay, which cannot exist in today's materialistic empiricist world. Okay, it will become the rule of tyranny. Okay, so as Plato is suggesting the idea of absolute power to the philosopher king, in today's arena it will become a tyranny. Okay, a kind of a Hitler regime, for example. Okay, where there is a individual holding majority of the power. Okay, there are higher chances that he or she can go corrupt and make a misuse of his power or the authority of the people to fulfill his personal interest and gain personal gains, basically. Okay, So the wisdom of many is preferable over the wisdom of one person. Okay, so he's suggesting the idea that wisdom of many, wisdom of people will be more preferable over the wisdom of one person. Okay, the law represents the collective wisdom of the ages, and here Aristotle is giving the law is a reason without passion. Okay, so here the law, okay, law is a reason without passion. So here law according to Plato is the collective wisdom of ages. Okay, it is the true that rule of law may have some limitation. It is true that he is also accepting that rule of law may have some limitation. The law may be rigid or it may be silent in some situations. Okay, so the problems, the limitations which is being given by Aristotle is that the law may be rigid in some cases or silent in some situations. Okay, because it is a wisdom from ages. Okay, and there are higher chances that some laws might have been missed. Okay, so or some may be very rigid because they know the consequences will be tough and hence rigid. Okay, the law may be rigid or it may be silent in some situations. And while institution of philosopher king may have many apparent advantages, okay, so one should not sacrifice good for the sake of best because best is unachievable. So here Aristotle is propounding the idea that though the institution of philosopher king may have several advantages, okay, but one should not sacrifice good for the sake of best because best is unachievable, because Plato is assigning the standard of best, okay, to the philosopher king, and Aristotle is suggesting the idea that one should not sacrifice good for the sake of best because best is unachievable, it is very idealistic. Okay, so in his more mature work, okay, in Plato's more mature work, there is a two work of Plato, that is young Plato and mature Plato. Okay, in young Plato he is propounding more idealistic nature of the state, but in mature Plato's work, the law, Plato himself modified his view. Okay, the young Plato's work is The Republic, remember that, which is one of the best book written on education said by Rousseau, and the law is a mature work of Plato. Okay, the law is book basically. Plato himself modified his views. Okay, so whatever views that Plato held in his work, that is The Republic, he completely modified his view in his later work, the mature work of the laws. Okay, in the light of the criticism of Aristotle. Okay, he has modified his view by the criticism that is made by his student Aristotle. Okay, and Plato re-established the rule of law as the best practicable state. Okay, before in young Plato's work we saw the notion that the rule by philosopher king is the best or the ideal. Okay, but in his more mature work he himself accepts that that is the very idealistic in nature, which can be unachievable. Okay, and Plato re-established his notion that the rule of law as the best practicable state. He accepted the Aristotle's perspective on the rule of law because one cannot sacrifice good for the sake of best because best is unachievable. Okay, that is being accepted by mature Plato here, and he reestablishes in the book Law that the rule of law as the best practicable state. Okay, best practicable state in the sense best practical in today's situation. Okay, which can be achieved. Okay, hence it is said that Aristotle's ideal state, rule of law, is Plato's second best state. Okay, so Aristotle's ideal state, that is the rule of law. Okay, there was a Plato's ideal state, that is rule of philosopher king, absolute power, and there is an Aristotle's ideal state, that is rule of law. Okay, which is the best practicable. So hence it is said that Aristotle's ideal state, that is rule of law, is the Plato's second best state. Okay, so we can also say that while Plato's diagnosis is correct, but prescription is not right. Okay, so Plato's diagnosis is correct in the sense that Plato is understanding the problems prevailing in the Athens socio-economic crisis that is going on in the Athens. Okay, he is realizing that there is an aristocratic class which is ruling, which is very corrupt in nature, due to which this is the situation prevailing in Athens. But his prescriptions, okay, because the medicine which he is prescribing is very idealistic in nature. He is completely prescribing a medicine that is a philosopher king, which is not best practicable. Okay, there are higher limitations on that. Okay, so that's why it is said that Plato's diagnosis is correct, but the prescription is not right. This is the very important statement, guys, one of the best statement to summarize Plato, to conclude Plato. Okay, so remember or note down this double star mark the statement to conclude your answer. Okay, Plato's diagnosis is correct, but the prescription is not correct. It can also be mentioned in criticism. Okay, when Plato argues that those who are reluctant to govern are better rulers than those who are eager to govern, he does not recognize human psychology. Okay, human psychology also says that the more you seek something, the better you will be there. Okay, the better you will be able to do there. Okay, so he's also not taking into consideration the psychological aspect of human brain. Okay, the more you want something, the more you want to do for it. Okay, more you want to go for it. Okay, the more I want to be a prime minister, the more I'll do to become a prime minister. Also, when there are higher chances, the better I'll perform and once I become a prime minister. Okay, but according to Plato, he's promoting the idea that the king who is very reluctant to govern is the best. Okay, what if I am very reluctant to govern, let's say, and I become a prime minister or a philosopher king, and there I am, due to my reluctancy, I am not showing interest to, let's say, rule. Okay, then what is the mean of me becoming a philosopher king, right? And I also have an absolute power where no authority can rule or dictate me, and that's completely upon me, right? So what are the probability that I will be not interested in ruling as well? 50-50, right? So high chances of risk. So that's why it is being advocated here that Plato is not taking a psychological aspect of human beings. That is, he is not taking into the consideration the people who are also eager to govern. Okay, he gives paramount importance to the sense of duty. Okay, if a man of reason have no lust for power but only a love for knowledge, it is doubtful how long and how well will they be able to do the work. The point I have said. Okay, if a person only have love for knowledge but have no lust for power, or no, because these are the motivating factor. Unless I do not have a lust for power, I'll have no motivation to work. Okay, because the duty and etc are very limited motivation for me to perform my duty, right? So one has to have those motivation in order to do his or her best when they are in that professional arena. Okay, thus some other institutional and legal measures are needed to ensure the same. Okay, so those thus other institutional and legal measures. Okay, institutional measures such as rule of law, as advocated by Aristotle. Okay, where there is not an absolute power of a single authority, there are a group of people who can keep that check and balances over each other. Okay, so that there is a harmony in the ruling as well as in the city state, and legal measures are needed to ensure the same. Okay, so guys, this was all about today, and I hope that you have got to understand some basic ideas of his theory of education and his theory of philosopher king. So guys, the parts I am running right now are very string in nature. Okay, like they are interconnected to each other. Once you watch part 1, you will be able to understand part 2 better, and you will be able to understand part 3 better. You will be able to understand part 4 better. Okay, so I'd recommend you to watch the lectures, previously taught lectures, and re-watch it again. Okay, so that you remember the statements, you remember certain terminologies and etc. Also, while attempting an answer, you always don't have to write all the answers. Okay, just create a basic framework in your brain and jot down some important statements. Let's say you are wanting to introduce Plato, so how you will be introducing him, like Plato is a child of his time or his place. Okay, Peloponnesian War, city Athens. So these are the particular statement which can just you can jot down. Okay, later on during your examination you can elaborate them as per your needs and whims. But now to save time, you can just create that framework and just have an idea that how would I approach this answer. Okay, that is more important than attempting an answer. Okay, because you are developing that mental framework which will also make your brain think much faster in your exams as well. Okay, you will be able to create a framework, right? And once you have that framework, you can easily expand upon the pointers basically, right? So here pointers and frameworks become very important, hence the highlighted material which I am giving to you becomes very important and paramount here. Okay, it will also help you revise very quickly during the inter inter pre mains period. Okay, so this is all about today, guys. I hope you like this video, and I'll once more request you all to show your love and support to UPSC Geek by NRG, and I'm hoping very best for you all people, and let's do something great, and make sure to strive each day, because always remember, thus you strive so you thrive. Okay, जितना आप मेहनत करेंगे उतना फल पाएंगे, अगर मैं साफ शब्दों में कहूँ तो इसी चीज़ को बात अपने बातों को विराम देते हुए मैं आज की लेक्चर यहीं पे समाप्त करता हूँ, एंड आप सबसे रिक्वेस्ट करना चाहूँगा कि प्लीज़ सब्सक्राइब एंड ऑल्सो like the video, and also if you like to add any valuable feedback to the series that we are conducting right now, you can leave that in the comment section. I would genuinely come back, read them and respond to you guys. Okay, so thank you people. Let's keep practicing more so that during the game day we can perform our best. Okay, thank you, see you all.